Welcome to episode 97 in our series on Duties of the Heart by Rabbi Bachya Ibn Pakuda. And we are in the 7th and final chapter of the Gate of Abstinence. And this is a fascinating chapter because it starts off describing the difference between our ancestors, the ancients, and ourselves in regards to the idea of abstinence. And then he quotes from someone, obviously a philosopher, with a beautiful piece that I will come to once we start, and this will close the Gate of Abstinence very beautifully. So, chapter 7, Rabbi Bahya begins. The difference between our ancients and ourselves in regards to abstinence is as follows. The ancients, for example, Chanoch, Noach, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Eov, and his friends, had pure minds and weak inclinations, and their souls followed the dictates of their minds. A small number of precepts sufficed them in order to serve God perfectly, given the faithfulness of their hearts to God. As it is said of Avraham, and he quotes from Nehemiah chapter 9 verse 8, and you found his heart faithful before you. They were not in need of the abstinence that departs from the balanced way prescribed by the Torah. When their descendants went down to Egypt and lived there 70 years in peace during Yosef's lifetime, their desires became strong, their passions increased, and their base instinct prevailed over their reason. Hence, they required a form of abstinence that would be the antithesis of their desire, and that would counter their base instinct. The Creator gave them more of the commandments whose origin is in revelation alone, commandments which served them instead of the abstinence appropriate to them, according to and even below their capacity. When they conquered the land of Canaan, settled in it, and began to enjoy its bounty, they pursued not only their basic needs, but also superfluities in food and drink, sexual relations, and building. The more the land was built up, the more their minds degenerated, as it says in Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 12, lest when you have eaten and are full, and have built fine houses, and lived in them, and your herd and flock will have increased, you then become proud and forget Hashem your God. The more their desires increased and intensified, the weaker became their minds, which were then less able to perceive the proper course. They now required, in order to withstand their desires, an intense form of abstinence, such as the way of the Nazirite and the practices of the Prophet's disciples, which we mentioned earlier in this gate. And so it was in subsequent generations. Minds were weak and desires were strong. Whenever they would engage in matters of this world, they would be distracted from matters of the next world. Hence, they required abstinence or order to free themselves of this world when performing work leading to the next world. The ancients, however, with their strong minds and pure souls, were able to engage in matters of this world and the next, without one impeding the other, as it is written, did your father not eat and drink and yet do justice and right? Hence it was well with them. That's from Yirmiyahu chapter 22 verse 15. And also from Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 18, King Solomon says, it is better that you hold on to the one and not let go of the other. And Rabbi Bahya continues now with a fascinating section that serves to close this gate, and it's self-explanatory. So Rabbi Bahya continues. I have seen, my brother, an excellent literary piece on the subject of abstinence. It was composed by one of the pious as a charge to his son. I think highly of it, and have chosen to close this gate with it. I present it to you just as I found it. May it serve you instead of my own admonition and guidance. Understand it and reflect upon it, and with God's help you will attain to what is good and right. It reads as follows. My son, may God set you amongst those who hear and listen, listen and reflect, reflect and know and act. May he not set you among those who sink in error, drunk with the wine of ignorance, who are enslaved by the instinct, ruled by this world, overcome by desires which engross them in pleasures, those who are driven by obsessions and seduced by lusts. In darkness they trip and fall, trapped in the routine of their error. They hear but do not listen, speak but do not act. They long for ease but end up sighing in distress. They seek pleasures but are seized with severe suffering. Their souls are weary, their bodies are tired, their intellects are neutralized, their powers of understanding are shattered. They collect gold which will be lost, and silver which will be relinquished, and they leave them to enemies or to unfaithful women. They finish palatial residences and dwell in graves. They build homes that they will not live in, accumulate wealth they will not spend. Each of them buries his father and his child, and yet fails to perform deeds of lasting value. Each of them is oblivious to his end and mindful only of his desires. What can be said for a middle that has lost its two ends, for the solitary individual whose parents have abandoned him? My son, think of an individual endowed by the Creator with vast understanding and mastery over his mind, an individual enlightened as to his own good by the Creator, who shows him the right way and draws him to it. People feel secure with him, and he feels secure with them. He is on good terms with them and is spared any harm from them. While others serve their base instincts, he serves the God of heaven and earth, who brings life and puts to death, who creates and provides, beside whom there is no other God. What a difference there is between people who follow base instinct and people whose inner lives are refined, whose innermost beings are pure, whose eyes are serene, whose hearts are full of trust, whose delight in remembering God when alone and express thanks to his goodness in every situation. The latter devote themselves to all areas of speculation, theoretical, mathematical, and theological, and cut through the veil that keeps one from seeing the ways of inwardness. Through hard work they arrive at the serenity of truth, forsaking comfort for true delights. They are not distracted by desires, and do not delay when death appears so far off. They proceed eagerly to the day of death, but are wary of what will follow it. They are God's honoured guests, who eagerly seek him, wait for him, serve him. They speak the truth and call for justice, without fear of the ruler or domination by an adversary. They are the noblest of men and more vigilant than any other people, the most honourable and the greatest of them all. They are honoured in the houses of God and esteemed in the sight of his creatures. Nothing can distract them from remembering God. Nothing can deter them from offering thanks to him. Their tongues are fluent in songs of praise and thanksgiving. Their hearts are filled with sincerity towards God and total commitment to the idea that God is one. This world puts up a facade before them, but they recognize its true face. They stride through it and depict to others. Its treachery is not hidden from them. Its deceit is not concealed from them. This world puts on its best clothes before them, but they consider it bare. It shows itself as if it were yielding to them, but they realize that it is under control. It smiles at them, but they glare back at it. It wishes to attract them, but they turn away from it. They observe its evil deeds. The shameful character of its acts become clear to them. It has no control over them, nor any means of drawing close to them. They are God's chosen and pure ones, the elite of the devout, men of clear vision, noble aspirations and pleasing endeavors. They stride towards God and are guided, trade with Him and profit, refine their inner lives and are refined, purify their hearts and become the elect. They arm themselves with reverence on the dangerous roads and are saved. Riding chariots of good deeds, they reach their destination, where they meet with abiding joy and unfailing elation. They pass the test of reckoning and are safe from suffering. Therefore, my son, choose what is good for your soul before the onset of remorse that will not help and worry that will not end. And so that's a fascinating and beautiful piece that Rabbi Bahya has presented from another pious philosopher, and he concludes this gate with the closing section. Rabbi Bahya continues, "May God in His mercy and abounding kindness show us, and you too, the right way and steer us to the path of happiness. Amen. The 9th gate is completed. A song of praise to God, may He be exalted." So an incredible ending to the gate of abstinence, and I'm tempted to comment on this, but I feel I should not. It was absolutely beautiful in its structure and message, and I feel that anything I say would detract from that. So I look forward to entering the next gate, which is the gate of the love of God, in the next episode.